Hi everyone, today we got a bit of a nothing day, tried to go higher a little bit pre-market, gave it back, finished a little lower from that peak there. So overall it was still up on the session, but just a little bit of retracement, didn't get above that high. Let's take a look at all of the charts and see if this makes sense as a zone to consider as a potential short-term top. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got the Trump administration and Goldman going at it, where Goldman economists agree that higher tariff inflation is coming. We haven't really seen that impact on markets quite yet. Is this going to be an actual effect that comes? We're not sure yet, right? We've had 2 months where we were supposed to see it, didn't really come in that high, and they said here no one is calling for runaway inflation, but a little bit of gains on the back of the tariffs should see some of these go just a little bit higher, and we have seen that. It did go a little bit higher on the core number this last iteration, but what they're saying here is that tariffs could subtract 1% from GDP and add 1 to 1.5% to inflation. If that's true, that would actually be pretty disastrous for markets in my opinion. This is not at all priced in. If we saw inflation jump to like 3.5 to 4% potentially, and then you see GDP come in to around 0 to 0.5%, I think markets would actually tumble quite a bit in that scenario. So I do think this is interesting, something to see coming from Goldman. Are they correct? I don't think they're all the way off. I don't know if this is the base case, but I would certainly put this as a little bit more likely than my worst case scenario. Moving over to fear and greed, 64 versus a 63, very little movement, very flat kind of day here. Momentum still greed, strength, still no movement, very slight step up there, interesting. Breadth, slight tick up there as well. Want to see what that looks like after yesterday's session. In today's session, put call ratio continues to tumble back down to a more reasonable level, still very much on the bullish side. Volatility falling back down a little bit more. And then no movement here on bonds. Pretty flat day, pretty flat on this indicator. Moving over to the economic calendar, basically nothing for today, but for tomorrow we do have core and headline PPI. That's interesting. And then core and headline retail sales for the Friday in the morning. So just a little bit of impact tomorrow morning and then potentially Friday morning. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here on the hourly chart, you can see very little movement like we talked about on the intro. You can see it here on the daily chart, gap up and doji. Structurally on the daily chart, we're above this trend. You can see just a little bit of an acceleration here, but I'm following this here on the hourly and we're still in there. We didn't hit the upper band here. We didn't hit it again today. So that's a little bit concerning. We're below the SMA on the RSI after hitting a really peak level, got all the way up to a 78.36, so pretty peak level there. We're going to get just a little bit of a pullback down to the trend support around 641.13, 55 EMA in that same area, 639.91. I would really like to see that, honestly. Test some support, find some buyers, get a push up to this kind of 652, 653 area. I think that would be super interesting, but for now, kind of a nothing day as we head into tomorrow's session, and you can see in the after hours, down about 50 cents, nothing crazy. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see we hit that upper ATR band yesterday and then hit it again here today. Makes sense why we slowed down a little bit, but stayed in bullish conditions. 642.47 is your trailing stop right now. Again, made it to that second ATR band, came up just a little bit short on that second push, and now we're sitting on the 8 EMA 644.27. Do we fall back down to that trailing stop 642? If we test that trend support and close below and close around that level, that would put you into bearish conditions on the hourly chart. That would be interesting. But of course, on the 4 hour, you have plenty of room. 637 is your support right now. On that trailing stop, hit the upper band, same as before, and then pulled back just a little bit. Still could certainly grind in here without a pullback, but I think a pullback would give you a little bit more upside potential for that continuation to that upper trend. In terms of levels, that upper ATR band right now, 647.02, which gives you about $2 to $3 of upside potential if we did push for that level tomorrow. Moving over to the NASDAQ charts, this looked a lot weaker here. You can see that big wick up, just like the SPY charts, retraced here, but we stayed below the 21, stayed below the 9 EMAs, and I actually held on to my puts most of the session. Made money on those because I did sell those puts, but then I didn't roll to the next day here. I think we might see just a little bit of a continuation, maybe down to 576.50, just a $3 pullback from here. Want to see it retest some of these zones, some trend support in here, give you a little bit of better opportunity on the hourly chart. Looking at that daily, you can see not usually what you want to see. We did go to the trend line. That was what we were expecting, and we weren't able to really kind of hold that in there. So momentum is still bullish, RSI is still bullish, but you're certainly extended. We had the retracement, we pushed through the level, we got to the trend. Doesn't mean we can't push through the trend, but there is certainly some sellers sitting up here at this trend line, kind of around that 585 area. Like I said, everything's still very much bullish, but this structure here, 3 bars down, that is a candle pattern that usually signals a little bit more selling to come. We've seen it before where you had a wick and then a big leg down and you kind of consolidated for a bigger move up. Certainly possible. Pulled back to the 55 EMA. Did we pull back to the 55 here? Around that 577 area. I think that's a possibility as well, but either way, I think we get a little bit more movement on the NASDAQ. Then moving over to the Tasty charts here on the NASDAQ, you can see that upper ATR band sitting there, 583.11, hit that upper band, pulled back, 9 EMA support, 579.03. We're kind of in between there, continuing to stay between the 9 and that upper ATR band, still very much an uptrend, but you can see it here on the hourly. Got a little extended, got to that upper band, pulled back to support, very similar to the SPY charts. But on the hourly chart here, you're sitting on that 8 EMA, 580.21, just barely below it, 580.20. We've been below it here a little bit during the session. If we can get back above it tomorrow, likely to see a nice resumption here to 583.80, push towards that upper band again, but for now, you do have just a little bit of hesitation here. It's likely to be somewhat like this, where you get another continuation higher, which is the expectation, but for now, just a hesitation, and you want to see a little bit of conviction to the upside. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, these on the other hand got absolutely everything you wanted here out of them. Huge pushes on both of them, 1.9% and 1% respectively. We said the Dow had been lagging. Was this the time? And sure enough, it was. Gapped up and rallied right to those all-time highs. Similar here on the Russell, pushing through that 229 level, pushing towards 232. Next level above that would be 235. This looks really, really good on both of these. Both of these benefiting really from the not inflation that we got the previous day. Big catalyst for the breakout above these levels here. Do we push all the way up to 240? That is the interesting play here. Momentum bullish, RSI not quite extended yet, but it is certainly extended after back-to-back days of 3% and 2%. Moving over to the Mag 7. Mag 7 rejected off of that trend line. We talked about it yesterday. We were right at it, and we did stop right at it. We held it, overthrew it again, and then sold down 0.64 off of that level. Momentum stepping towards bearish, RSI pulling back, but still above the SMA after being overbought conditions. This is likely why we're seeing that NASDAQ underperform. Even the SPY underperformed the Russell. The Russell was the best. So again, tech underperformance today makes sense why we saw what we saw across the major indices. Does this pull back to that 9 EMA and give you just a little bit more hesitation, down about 1.5% to that area? Something to watch for tomorrow. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft. Apple continues to be a rocket ship over the last 2 weeks, continues to go here, got above 230, headed towards 235. That was what we were looking for. Said that was the zone of resistance. We got above it in the pre-market, gapped higher and rallied all through the session. Almost got to the level, just missed it. 235 was the high, so about $1 off of that level. And then looking at Microsoft, another down day, 1.64% pushing through that 9 EMA, pushing back to VWAP. You got 21 EMA as your support, 517.71. If that goes, then you might be looking at the trend in here around 513, and then your next zone is that 55 EMA all the way down at 495.88 right now. So Microsoft showing finally a little bit of hesitation after the massive run that we had. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla was down about 0.5%, still above the level here, 336.60. Did go a little bit higher for a second. Going to be watching this tomorrow if we can hold this structure on that support area. Would like to see that potential trend there. And then looking at NVIDIA, still above the 180 level, but similar to Microsoft, hesitating here at the support, not necessarily going higher. Momentum a little bit bearish, RSI a little bit bearish here. So are we starting to see just a little bit of a tech hesitation from our biggest leaders? Something to consider for the NASDAQ over the next couple days. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples still hesitating in this kind of zone here. We're above the level, had a big pullback actually. The low of day was 81.93, so almost pulled back to the level there just to finish basically unchanged on the day, actually completely unchanged, 0-0 across the board. Interesting to see that. Still need to see it push to this 83.43 area. Momentum's kind of fading. RSI is not quite getting there. Are we going to have a little bit of a pullback, higher low setup? That seems more likely at this point. And then discretionaries, big push there. Huge gap, huge rally, push through the zone. Your next level is 235.85, very close to your all-time highs. That's going to be around 240. So nice push there. Looks like a nice clean breakout on discretionaries. Moving over to real estate and transports. Haven't been talking about these, but it looks like real estate's put in a short-term bottom around this kind of 40-50 area, bouncing a little bit. Do we get a lower high and then a push down to 40 area? Certainly possible, but give you a little bit of opportunity in the lower end of this range over the last 2 days. Probably going to see a little bit more push here. And then look at transports. Huge leg off of the CPI data, 3%. Big continuation here. If this gets above 71.13, that's going to be big for the economy. If transports are doing well, that means to me that the broader economy is going to continue to do well. So this continues to push. You got a higher low setup structure here. Still a bullish short-term trend, which means still bullish for markets in my opinion. Moving over to breadth, as we expected, big breadth thrust here over the last 2 days, up 22 and then up almost 18 here on 20-day. Still want to see this get into this kind of 78 to kind of 86 area before this kind of culminates. So expecting another couple days of push. That is really driving the Russell higher. This is the S&P breadth, but either way, if breadth is expanding, that means the rest of stocks are really what's rallying, not the Mag 7, which means the Russell is going to benefit from that. So that is what we're seeing here. Same here on 50-day. Not as aggressive. We didn't get to that 68, 66 level with the 62.25 level broken. Next level after that, 77.50 if we can get there. Otherwise, right now, structurally, this is still a lower high structure with a lower low structure. Do we get another lower low off of a lower high here? That is what we have to watch for over the next couple days. Moving over to the dollar. The dollar is at that trend structure here now. So this is what we're watching for. Are we going to bounce? We touched the trend, got a little bit of a reaction here. Are we going to come down, retest it again, and then get that bigger spike up like I believe that we're going to? Or are we going to cut through here to some lower lows? That is the concern. Watching this area closely tomorrow on the dollar. If this structure breaks, I'll take off that really small position that I have, but I would like to see it hold, and I do think that it will. Moving over to bonds. Bonds here both doing well. TLT up 0.83 and JNK up about a third, right to this consolidation high with the higher low setup. This is starting to look like a bullish triangle, and then you got TLT gapped below the trend, gapped back above the trend, up, like I said, 0.83. Momentum back to bullish, RSI back above the SMA. Looks like a little bit of a fake out 21 EMA retest. Is this where we start to get a bit of a leg up tomorrow on TLT? That is the hope. I've been bullish on this for a long time. Still think you have some opportunity here, especially in the short term. Over the medium to long term, you definitely do, in my opinion. Moving over to the VIX. Here you got a break below that 14.7 level. So at this point, you have to look for the next support at 12.75. Momentum a little bit bearish, RSI a little bit bearish. So you would expect this to continue to fall and markets to continue to rally, in my opinion. Moving over to my accounts, I made money again on the day. I was bullish going into the day, and as I expected, we did get a little bit more bullishness. So I was short some puts on the Russell and the Qs. Both of those were in good position. Honestly, at this point, if we get a break above the next level, I'll probably go long some shares on the Russell. Looks really, really good. Watching that 232 area, but right now, short some puts for tomorrow, 60 cents for some 230s, and then that dollar position. We're right at that support area, like I said. Hopefully we get a bounce from there. And then looking at the Qs, like I talked about, I don't have a position right now. I'm looking for just a little bit of a retracement. Want to get a slightly better price versus what we have right now. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of Goldman Sachs forecast. Are we going to see GDP fall by 1%? Are we going to see inflation go up by 1 to 1.5%? If we do, where do you see markets when we get that data? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.